Welcome back. Ed O'Keefe mentioned a moment ago that President Trump is getting ready to leave the White House for a weekend in Florida. He's on the South Lawn right now preparing to board Marine One, but also talking to reporters. Depending on how long that takes and how many questions he takes and what he says, we may turn some of that sound around for you to hear the president's retrospective on this very historic day and a very tense meeting with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy in the Oval Office. Part of that Oval Office meeting was to be, if things had gone normally, and they most certainly did not, a prelude to a signing ceremony, where Zelenskyy and President Trump were to sign an agreement that would have granted the United States some degree of access to Ukraine's rare minerals in exchange for continued support and implied security guarantees. Instead, that deal is now completely up in the air, and Zelenskyy has left the White House. Here's how today's meeting ended.
But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
Gracelin Baskaran is the director of the Critical Minerals Security Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Fans of this program, and I know there are many of you, remember she was on the program earlier this week going over the details of this to-be-signed minerals deal. Gracelin, it's not signed. It's in a state of, I don't know, panicked insecurity. What do you make of today's events?
I was on live TV when it happened. It caught me on surprise, too, to be honest, because, you know, we had gotten to a point where we were actually at a draft agreement. It was in writing. So in a way, today felt like it was a day for formalities and signature, but that's obviously not what we got.
And would that deal have been good for Ukraine, good for the United States, and the beginning of a redefinition of this relationship?
The deal would have been very good for Ukraine for a few reasons, right? I mean, consider that no current mineral assets were included in the deal. So only revenues from future projects would we take revenue from under the deal. What that means in the lead up to the time that those projects are developed is that energy infrastructure, transportation infrastructure would be rebuilt, a lot of which was damaged during the war. We would start to see that geological mapping so that we could eventually develop those assets. And we would see some sort of kind of security in place that comes with economic cooperation. So there are near-term benefits for Ukraine that are being bypassed by not signing.
Is this something that can be repaired from your vantage point or based on what you've heard subsequently to this blow up in the Oval Office?
I don't think it's over. I think both sides need to sit and think about it. I think certainly President Zelenskyy, you know, he demonstrated an understanding, awareness, and acknowledge that without U.S. support, kind of standing in the region next to Russia would be quite difficult. So ultimately, there's going to have to be some sort of agreement to enter that next phase. And I think President Zelenskyy needs to think about what he's willing to compromise to get to that point.
We don't know who's at fault here, but we do know senior officials within the Trump administration are describing Zelenskyy's attitude as intemperate and that they were surprised by his requests for more guarantees or getting in the way of signing this agreement. That's the Trump administration's current assessment. Does this leave Zelenskyy with very many options, considering how offended, it appears, the Trump administration feels about what happened today?
It was certainly a very inflamed conversation. I think, look, I mean, to me, it's like he's going to have to come to a near-term decision in terms of what is he willing to forego? We knew he wanted security guarantees from the initial agreement, which was actually, you know, the Ukraine paying $500 billion through mineral revenue back to the U.S. for what he called for the aid provided, even if that number was a little bit gray as to how it was reached. And then President Zelenskyy wanted security guarantees. The U.S. ultimately compromised on that $500 billion figure and did not ask for that $500 billion to be repaid. In the latest draft agreement, there were still no security guarantees, but he came to Washington hoping to kind of advance that, but didn't quite get it.
Gracelin Baskaran, as always, thank you.